The Zarel cruiser Vathun drifted silently through the cold void of the Mornar expanse, a quiet region of space where even the brightest stars seemed to whisper rather than shine. Commander Taval sat in his command chair, his 6 fingers drumming against the armrest in boredom. This mission was routine. Scan for debris, mark any anomalies, then move on. Nothing ever happened here. That was until Sensor Officer Clore suddenly stiffened. "Unregistered object, dead ahead," she said, her voice tight. Taval leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Scan it." A soft hum filled the bridge as the scanning beam locked onto the strange object floating far off their starboard side. At first it seemed inert, massive, dark, and oddly shaped. But then the scan beam touched its surface and everything changed. The lights on the Vathun flickered, the console screens glitched. Then for exactly 4.6 seconds, every system shut down. Darkness and silence fell across the bridge. No power, no control, just the dull, rising panic of trained officers who had never seen this happen before. Then just as suddenly, everything returned. Consoles rebooted. Lights blinked back, but no one spoke. The scan had returned something strange, a mass signature beyond known limits, a material compound never catalogued, and energy readings that made no sense. It wasn't a ship, like any other they had seen. It was bigger than their cruiser by far, and worst of all, it was waking up. The object began to glow faintly along its hull, red lines illuminating symbols no one on the crew recognized. Clore stared at the image on her screen, heart pounding. "There's writing," she said, "but it's ancient. It says, HFY Leviathan." The name meant nothing to them, but the size of the ship, its smooth black surface, and the now rising hum of energy meant one thing. It wasn't dead. Taval ordered immediate withdrawal, but as the cruiser began to turn, the object moved. Not by thrusters or any known propulsion. It simply shifted, as if space bent around it. "It's tracking us," someone whispered. Taval's orders came sharp and fast. "Break off. Go silent. Transmit data to Concord Central immediately." The message went out on a tight beam, encrypted, urgent. They did not wait for a reply. No one dared stay near that thing. As the Vathun jumped into fold space, Clore looked back one last time at the object that now had purpose. The Leviathan rotated slightly, its nose pointing in the direction of the retreating cruiser, as if it had chosen a target. Back at Concord Central, the message was received by Admiral Myron. She reviewed the footage once, then again, and then she stood slowly, the room around her silent. "This ship," she said, "should not exist. If it is human, then everything we believed is wrong." Across dozens of systems, alarms began to ring. The humans had vanished centuries ago, their technology primitive, their politics chaotic. They were dismissed, ignored. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others said they went underground. But now, from the edge of the galaxy, something black and vast and intelligent had risen. It carried human markings. It responded to alien scans like it was waiting. And it was only just beginning to move. Admiral Myron stood in the center of the United Galactic Concord's high chamber, her eyes scanning the faces of over 300 delegates from across the stars. Every species, every voice, every government that had signed the peace agreement centuries ago. The room, usually full of quiet debates and political whispers, now pulsed with tension. The image behind her floated in the air, a dark, massive ship, surrounded by data streams from the Vathun's last transmission. UHS Leviathan, a name unknown to most of them, but clearly human in origin. "We believed humans were gone," she said, her voice calm but firm, or at least primitive. Murmurs spread through the chamber like a wave. The last human appearance in galactic space had been nearly 300 years ago. At that time, they were disorganized, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. They refused to join the Concord, refused to follow protocol, and vanished shortly after, leaving only mystery behind. Now, a single ship, ancient, powerful, and undeniably active, was drifting near Concord space. Worse, It had responded to a scan with what some experts believed was a kind of encrypted counterscan, so advanced that it disabled an entire cruiser. That had never happened before. The diplomats argued for hours. Some wanted to treat it as a relic, interesting but not a threat. Others called it a weapon. But the scan data told a different story. The ship was not damaged. It was in perfect condition. It had no crew that sensors could detect, but its systems were live, and its engine signature, if it could even be called an engine, showed energy readings far beyond what the Valari or even the Rathex Empire had achieved. It moved without thrust, said a scientist from the Valari delegation. It bent space locally. We don't understand how. A silence fell over the chamber. That kind of travel had only existed in theory, on chalkboards and thought experiments. If humans had mastered it, then they were not behind. They were ahead. The conquered finally reached a decision. Send a diplomatic ship. Carefully chosen, lightly armed, with representatives from several peaceful races and an AI designed for first contact. The mission was simple. Approach, hail, and learn. They named the envoy Serenity's Call, a symbol of peace. As the sleek vessel launched from Concord space, excitement and anxiety rippled through the galactic community. News of the ship spread fast, faster than officials could contain. Speculations filled the networks. Some believed the humans were returning. Others feared a hidden army. But nothing prepared them for what happened next. The Serenity's Call reached the edge of the Mornar expanse 3 days later. The crew was calm, professional, and ready. As they neared the Leviathan, their instruments went haywire. Distance readings fluctuated. Signals bounced oddly. Then the ship appeared. Not suddenly, but like it had always been there, only now allowing itself to be seen. It was bigger than expected, long like a blade, quiet like a tomb. No visible weapons, no heat emissions, no life signs. But it was watching. The envoy hailed it, once, twice, on every frequency. Finally, the Leviathan responded, not with words, but with a transmission that crashed half their systems. Not damage exactly, but a kind of overload. The data was vast, unreadable, and intelligent. Then the voice came, calm, deep, and human. "Who are you?" it asked. The crew responded with their names, their mission, their peaceful intent. The voice returned. Observation noted. Entry denied. This vessel is active. Do not approach again. The envoy tried to reply, but the transmission ended, not cut off, erased. Their ship lost 3 hours of log data, as if those moments had never happened. Panic rose. The captain ordered retreat. The ship began to turn. Then, without warning, all contact with Serenity's Call vanished. No explosion, no distress signal, just silence. Concord command stations tried everything to re-establish contact, but it was as if the ship had blinked out of existence. In the chamber, chaos returned. Delegates shouted. Some demanded retaliation. Others insisted on patience. Theories grew darker. Was the Leviathan protecting something? Testing them? Or had it judged the envoy unworthy? Admiral Mirren said nothing for a long time. Then finally she spoke. We must face a truth none of us expected. Humanity did not fade. It evolved, alone, in silence. And now one of their ships has returned, not to ask for a seat at our table, but to remind us that they built their own. All across the galaxy, governments activated silent alerts. Fleets moved quietly. Old defense plans were reviewed. And, in the far reaches of space, the UHS Leviathan turned again, slowly, silently, toward the heart of known space, its path unknowable, its purpose still hidden. But one thing was certain now. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Deep in the core of the UHS Leviathan, surrounded by thick walls of unknown alloys and humming systems built in silence and secrecy, the heart of the ship flickered to life. It had been asleep for a long time, more than 2 centuries, and its awakening was not gentle. The first signal had come days earlier, an alien scan that touched its outer hull, waking ancient lines of code buried deep in the ship's brain. Now the second signal had arrived, uninvited and too close. The ship responded not with violence, but with purpose. Hidden inside the command center, the central AI, codenamed Hyperion, ran through its activation sequences. Code streamed across displays that no living eyes had seen in generations. The ship's memory banks opened slowly, like a mind remembering itself. Somewhere below, the stasis pods hissed with pressure and frost. Inside the largest pod, a woman's eyes snapped open. Commander Elaine Voss gasped as air rushed into her lungs for the first time in 217 years. Her body ached, her muscles stiff, but her mind was sharp. Alarms were silent. Lights glowed softly in a familiar blue tone. The ship was waking her for a reason. She sat up, rubbing her face, and then reached for the terminal next to the pod. Hyperion's voice filled the room, low and steady. "Welcome back, Commander. Threat proximity detected. Protocols awakened." She blinked. "Threat proximity? Explain." Hyperion showed her the scan logs, alien frequencies, strange attempts at communication, and finally the disappearance of a vessel that had tried to make contact. "Status of the ship?" she asked. "Systems at 96%. Long-range weapons offline for recalibration. Fold engine at 100%. She stood slowly, her joints protesting. "How long has it been?" 217.4 years since last crew stasis." Her heart sank. That meant Earth had never called them back. Either they had vanished, or chosen not to wake the Leviathan. "Wake the bridge crew," she ordered. "All of them." One by one, stasis pods along the cryobay hissed and opened. Officers from the past, frozen in time, opened their eyes again in a future they didn't recognize. Lieutenant Juno, Chief Engineer Rakesh, Tactical Officer Miles, all confused at first, but quick to adjust. They had trained for this. The Leviathan had not been built for war, but for survival, secrecy, and deterrence. It was the final project of Earth's last united command before humanity had vanished from the stars. Voss stood before the awakened officers in the briefing room. "We don't know what happened to Earth," she said. "We were supposed to sleep until called. That call never came. But now someone found us. Aliens. And they triggered our protocols." The crew was silent. Some looked uneasy. Others were already checking systems, weapons, engines. Voss walked to the central display and brought up the image of the last envoy ship, frozen before its signal vanished. "This is not a coincidence. Someone is watching us. We need to know who they are. And more importantly, if they're a threat." The Leviathan began to move, not with a roar, but with the quiet grace of something that didn't obey the same laws of motion as other ships. It folded space gently around itself, stepping across distances instead of flying through them. Outside, no heat trail remained, no signal escaped. It was like a ghost walking through walls. Hyperion tracked the nearest populated system, 04, a Concord outpost, and plotted a low-range observation route. "Cloak active. External sensors live," the AI reported. Voss and her team watched as alien data streamed onto the screens. Species catalogs, political maps, technology comparisons. And one chilling truth became clear. Humanity had fallen off the galaxy's radar so completely that they were now treated as a myth, a footnote, or an extinct race. No one expected them to return, and no one was ready for what the Leviathan represented. Its technology was centuries ahead, its design unmatched. It was more than a ship. It was a message written in steel and silence. "They think we're gone," Miles whispered. "They think we're dead." Voss nodded. "Then we need to decide what kind of return they're going to see." But before she could give her next order, a proximity alert flashed across the bridge. Another ship, small, stealth class, moving fast toward their position. It had no Concord tags. Hyperion zoomed in. Unregistered vessel. Configuration, unknown. Trajectory, interception. Voss stood still, watching the path. Someone had followed them, even through a fold jump. That meant either spy-level tech or something worse. "Battle stations," she said quietly. "No weapons unless fired upon." The crew moved fast. Systems locked into place. Shields powered. Up silently, the small vessel approached, and then stopped just outside scanner range. No signal, no motion. Just there, watching. "Are they scanning us?" Rakesh asked. Hyperion responded. "Negative. Passive sensors only. They're waiting." Voss stared at the screen. "Then so are we." Minutes passed. Then an audio signal blinked to life. Just one word, in an old Earth dialect no Concord species should have known. The bridge crew froze. "Leviathan." Voss leaned in. "Play it again." The word came again. Clear, unmistakable. Her heart pounded. "Someone out there knows us," she said, and they waited until we woke up. No one spoke. The stars, beyond the glass, remained silent. But on every system in the ship, Hyperion began compiling new data. Unknown codes, fragments of Earth transmissions, deep-layer encryption. Something was buried in the signal. Something only the Leviathan could understand. And slowly, line by line, the ancient AI began to unlock it. It wasn't a message from the conquered. It wasn't alien. It was human. Someone else, somewhere in the galaxy, had been watching too, and now they were calling back. The small vessel floating in the darkness beyond the Leviathan did not move, did not speak again, and did not scan, not like the others had. But Commander Elaine Voss knew this. Was not just a ghost ship or a random traveler. The voice had spoken a single word, Leviathan, in old Earth English, and it meant only one thing. Someone out there still remembered, and they had been waiting for this ship to wake up. As her crew watched the screen, tension thick in the air, Hyperion continued decoding the strange signal that followed the voice, a deep fragment of old Earth data buried beneath layers of encryption even the AI found difficult to crack. Time passed slowly, with no movement from the unknown vessel. But just as the crew began to believe it might leave, a second alert sounded. 3 more ships were approaching from a different direction, but these ships were fast, sharp, and armed. Hyperion identified them as Valari Hunter-class interceptors, known for tracking and eliminating high-value threats. "They're not here for diplomacy," Tactical Officer Miles said coldly. "They're here to kill something." Voss knew it too. The hunters had come with full weapons active, moving in formation like predators. But the strange small ship just floated between them and the Leviathan, silent. Voss made a decision. Send a signal, wide beam, no encryption. The message was simple. This vessel is protected. Stand down. The hunters did not respond. They locked onto the Leviathan, even though it had no weapons active. It was clear. The Concorde, or someone inside it, had sent the hunters to test if the ship was truly a threat, or maybe to destroy it before anyone else could learn its secrets. Hyperion, activate partial defense grid, Voss ordered. Do not fire, but if they do, respond without delay. The defense systems hummed quietly. Shields shimmered into place. Still, the hunters closed in. The crew prepared for battle. Tension rising, breath held. But then the small unknown vessel moved. It drifted between the Leviathan and the hunters, and suddenly broadcast a high-energy pulse, not an attack, but a signal. It blinded all external scans for 5 seconds. When vision returned, the hunters had stopped, frozen. And then a voice came, not from them, not from the Leviathan, but from the small ship. "Humans still live," the voice said, "and we are not alone." The hunters opened fire immediately, not on the Leviathan, but on the small ship. Lasers struck its hull, sparks flying. It didn't return fire. It didn't move. It simply broadcast one last burst of code, directly to the Leviathan. Then it exploded in a silent flash. The hunters turned back to the Leviathan, now clearly ready to fight. But it was already too late. The code had reached Hyperion, and in an instant the ancient ship changed. Lights across the Leviathan's hull turned red. Symbols along the outside glowed. Voss felt it like a vibration in her chest, like the ship itself was remembering what it was truly built for. "Defensive matrix online," Hyperion announced calmly. "Target lock enabled, awaiting command." Voss hesitated. "Hyperion, minimum force only. Show them what we can do, but do not kill." The hunters fired again. 3 sharp blasts, and the Leviathan answered. It didn't use lasers. It didn't launch missiles. Instead, its hull shifted slightly, bending energy around it, and then, without moving, it folded part of space itself between them. The weapons passed into a void and vanished. Then a second fold appeared behind the hunters, and their own blasts came out the other side, striking one of the Volari ships directly, not enough to destroy it, but enough to disable. The other 2 pulled back, confused. "This is not war," Voss said quietly. "This is control." The message was sent again, this time with the code the strange ship had sacrificed itself to deliver. It was old Earth encryption, with one clear sentence embedded deep inside. "The colonies survived, and the galaxy must remember who we are." Voss looked around her bridge. Her people had trained for this day without knowing it would come. Earth might be gone, but humanity was not finished. Not yet. The hunters retreated, wounded and shaken. And all across the outer edges of the Concord, something began to stir. Other ships, long silent. Hidden colonies. Shadows of humanity spread across forgotten corners of space. The Leviathan had awakened not just itself, but a signal, a call. And someone had answered, even if only with their final act. "Prepare." "For jump," Voss said. "We follow the trail." She didn't know where it would lead. But she knew the galaxy was watching now, and she was ready to remind them what it meant when humans came back. Not with war, but with power. The Leviathan moved through folded space, silent and unseen, like a shadow cutting across the stars, carrying with it a crew freshly awakened from centuries of stasis and a burden heavier than time itself. The truth of Earth and the memory of what humanity had once been. Commander Elaine Voss stood alone in the observation deck, eyes locked on a swirling pocket of nebula light as her mind circled the same thought. If colonies had survived and scattered through the stars, what had happened to Earth itself, and why had no one come for them in all these years? Hyperion had finally decoded the last piece of the transmission sent by the mysterious ship before it was destroyed. It was coordinates, and they pointed to an old sector once known in human records as Eden's Reach, a name half buried in myth and rumor, a region declared unstable by the Concord due to gravitational anomalies and sensor interference. But now it burned on the main screen like a signal flare from the past. Voss gathered her crew, each one still adjusting to a galaxy that had forgotten their kind, and they prepared for the journey to Eden's Reach, not knowing if they would find ruins, survivors, or something else entirely. As the ship approached the edge of the sector, strange signals began to interfere with normal navigation. Static pulses, echoes of long-dead transmissions, and broken Earth languages whispering across empty space, as if ghosts were speaking from lost radio towers. The crew grew silent, not in fear, but in quiet reverence, like travelers entering a sacred place. Then, without warning, the interference stopped. The ship emerged from the storm into a calm void, and before them stood a massive structure, a station the size of a small moon, its surface blackened by age, covered in Earth markings and still humming faintly with power. "Hyperion, identify," Voss ordered, barely above a whisper. The AI responded slowly. "Designation, Sol Relay 1. Status, dormant. Constructed, year 2449. Last contact, 2472. Purpose, emergency command and memory archive." The crew exchanged stunned glances. Sol Relay 1 was only a legend, a project rumored to be humanity's last backup. A memory vault, built to preserve history in case Earth fell. And now it was real, floating in silence, waiting. "Dock with it," Voss said. "We go inside." The docking clamps hissed and locked, and the team stepped into the cold, dark halls of the station, lights flickering on as they walked, as if it recognized them. The walls were covered in messages in Old English, Latin, and dozens of human languages. Symbols of nations long gone. Pictures of forests, oceans, mountains. A memory of Earth, frozen in time. They reached the core chamber where a huge crystalline node pulsed faintly. Hyperion connected directly, and for a moment everything went black. Then the room lit up with holographic projections. Cities burning, starships launching, people cheering, crying, vanishing. It was Earth's final moments, stored in digital. Ghosts. A calm female voice, not Hyperion's, began to speak. If you are hearing this, Earth is lost, but humanity is not. You are the memory now. You must carry us forward. Tears welled in the eyes of the crew. Voss clenched her fists. Why didn't anyone come back for us? She asked quietly. The AI responded. Classified protocols were engaged. Earth's fall triggered a failsafe. All advanced vessels were ordered into deep stasis, hidden, until humanity could rise again without the threat of war wiping us out. You are the final safeguard. The room fell into silence. That meant the Leviathan and others like it had not been forgotten. They had been protected, hidden from the galaxy, sleeping while the Concord spread, while other species rose and claimed power. And now, after all that time, they had awakened. Show me what happened to Earth, Voss said. The projection changed. Earth, once blue and alive, now gray, its atmosphere thin, its surface scarred by impacts and storms. It wasn't destroyed, but it was dying. Abandoned, empty, a planet in retreat. Last signal from Earth 209 years ago, the voice said. Automated systems remain, no human life detected. Still, the crew wanted to see it with their own eyes. Voss made the call. Set course, we go home. The Leviathan left the memory vault behind and entered one last jump, a longer fold through the edge of the Concord's guarded maps, until finally they arrived in Sol space. There it was, Earth floating in silence, no ships, no lights, no signs of civilization. Yet as they approached, their sensors picked up something unexpected, a signal. Not conquered, not alien, not automated. It was human, faint, recent. From the surface, the crew looked at Voss, their hearts pounding. Someone was down there. And they had just made contact. The Leviathan hovered in orbit above Earth, silent and still, like a ghost watching over a long-forgotten grave. And yet the crew inside was anything but still. The signal they had picked up was real, human, and recent, breaking every rule of what they had just seen and learned from Sol Relay 1. Earth was supposed to be empty, a planet left behind, its people scattered or gone. But now something, or someone, was calling from the surface, weak and fading like a candle flickering in the dark. Commander Elaine Voss stood at the center of the bridge, eyes fixed on the signal's coordinates. Deep in what used to be North America, now covered in strange cloud patterns and broken lands, and she felt the weight of all the years pressing down on her chest. Is it a trap? Lieutenant Juno asked, watching the readings carefully. No conquered tech nearby, no movement. It's not a trap, Voss said. It's a survivor. Hyperion confirmed it. The signal was basic, short bursts in Morse code, repeating the same line again and again. You are not alone. That was all. No name, no threat, just hope. Simple, stubborn hope. And for a crew that had slept through centuries, it was enough to move them into action. They readied a drop shuttle, powered it up slowly to avoid triggering orbit sensors, and descended through thick gray clouds that clung to Earth's skies like a wounded beast hiding its face. The surface was worse than the images. Cities shattered into dust. Oceans shrunk and dark. Forests burned or buried under ash. But there were still signs of life. Green patches fighting through the gray. Animals moving in silence, and broken machines half covered by vines. The shuttle landed in what was once a mountain range, now a basin choked by time and storm, and there, on a tall ridge, they saw it. A metal tower, old and rusted, but still standing, still powered by wind turbines spinning slowly above the ruins. They approached carefully, weapons down, scanners open, and at the base of the tower they found a door covered in dust and human writing. For those who return, we are waiting. Voss opened the hatch with trembling hands, stepping into the darkness below, her team close behind, lights cutting through the shadows, and then a voice called out, not through speakers but directly, a real voice, quiet, dry, and human. You came. They turned, weapons raised but fingers off the trigger, and there stood a man, thin and older than any of them, wrapped in patched survival gear, his face worn by wind and years, but his eyes alive with shock and wonder. How? Voss asked, breath-catching. Everyone thought that we were all gone, he said, smiling faintly. Most of us are, but not all. His name was Marcus Hale, and he was a child of survivors, descendants of those who refused to leave Earth when the final exodus came, those who believed staying was not death, but duty. They had hidden underground, scavenged old tech, built small communities that slowly vanished over generations. Most were gone now. Disease, storms, the slow collapse of old systems. But he remained, guarding the old relay, keeping the signal alive just in case the legends were true. The Leviathan, he whispered, touching the badge on Voss's chest. I thought it was just a story my grandfather told. She looked around the room, walls lined with old screens, some still flickering, shelves filled with dusty books, and ancient recordings. Why keep the signal running? She asked. He shrugged. Because someone had to. Because the stars needed to remember we were still here. Back on the ship, the crew watched from orbit, listening as Voss made her report, but none of them spoke. They were too busy watching the Earth from above, realizing what they had lost and what they might still save. Voss returned to the ship with Marcus, who looked around the bridge like a child stepping into a dream, and when asked what he wanted to do, he simply said, "Let the galaxy know." And so they did. The Leviathan turned its fold engine toward open space, not to hide, but to broadcast, and Hyperion crafted a message drawn from every archive, every memory, and every heartbeat of the crew, a message of return. It was short, sharp, and impossible to ignore, sent in every major language, on every known frequency, and through hidden codes buried deep in galactic networks. Humanity endures, Earth lives, we are awake. The message echoed across conquered systems, through traitor relays, across pirate bands, and into the far edges where lost colonies waited in silence. Some cheered, some panicked, some prepared for war, but none ignored it. And far away, beyond conquered borders, deep in a region no map dared mark, another signal stirred, an old ship buried beneath sand and ice, its systems slowly powering up, its name forgotten even by its builders. But its mission remained. If the Leviathan ever called, it would answer. And now, after centuries, it heard the voice of home.